Hi there, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Tatiana Arnell. I am your city engineer, and I am here to present the adoption of the City of Oxnard Capital Improvement Program for fiscal years 2021 through 2026. So the recommendation here today is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize first, the fiscal year 2021-2022 projects to be selected from the proposed 2021 through 2026 City of Oxnard 5-year capital improvement program, and second, to adopt the said 2021 through 2026 City of Oxnard 5-year capital improvement program. It's that time of year again. So the purpose here today is to provide you all with an overview of the capital improvement program, or what I'll often refer to as the CIP. We'll also get into a summary of the new projects that are showing up on this CIP. And finally, I will conclude this presentation by highlighting some of the many accomplishments for this past fiscal year in relation to the CIP. So for starters, what is a CIP? So generally speaking, this is a city's infrastructure plan to build or restore our facilities. It does not address maintenance work, but some projects may include the construction and major alteration of buildings, hardware for IT, replacement of cast iron pipes, asbestos pipes, replacement of playground structures, the infamous street rehabilitation, the installation of new traffic signal hardware, and various work at our different water and wastewater facilities, or environmental resources, things of that nature. So basically anything that is city owned that needs to be improved upon or newly built will be essentially a part of this capital improvement program, and Public Works will typically lead the construction of said things. So what projects qualify under the CIP? So it must meet two criteria. First, it must consist of the construction, erection, alteration, renovation, improvement, demolition, or repair work involving any, again, city-owned facility. And second, it's a project that must cost at least $100,000. I do like to note to people that studies and rolling equipment purchases do not qualify under the CIP. We usually do that through our operating budgets and separately. Now, studies may end up showing projects that will need to be added into the CIP. However, that's not a part of the CIP quite yet. So what does the process look like? First, the departments identify the necessary capital improvements. This is citywide, not just Public Works, but basically Public Works reaches out to every department, and we identify what facilities need what type of work. In addition to that, we are also striving towards putting together assessments throughout the city for various of our facilities. Stormwater infrastructure is another assessment that needs to be done in the relatively near future. And so that's one thing that we're working on right now. Staff then reviews those projects for conformity with the general plan and any other need assessments like the ones that I just mentioned previously. And then we go ahead and verify the cost estimates and determine the funding priority for those based on the various criteria that we'll get into. Then staff presents the CIP to the Planning Commission, which we already did back on March 18th of this year. This is to determine the conformity with the general plan itself. And then finally, we do present the CIP to the Public Works and Transportation Committee, such as in this instance, and finally we'll go to City Council for final approval. So the CIP is organized in such a way that it highlights examples of projects by funding source, council district, and fiscal year. We do have appendices which sort them in various ways, first by fiscal year, then funding source, then Appendix B you'll find fiscal year, then by district, fiscal year alone for Appendix C, and then finally Appendix D will show by fiscal year, then by priority. And these projects are also categorized into 6 categories, which are buildings, IT, parks and open space, seawalls, transportation and drainage, and finally, utilities. Here's a sample on the right-hand side of what a project sheet looks like. And generally what you'll find on these is the project title, the location, the council districts impacted, or it'll tell you if it's a citywide benefit project, the project description, purpose and need, any relevant categories and goals based on the general plan. I do want to note that while we only put in one in here, that doesn't mean that there's only one general plan consistency with it. We just select the one that fits it the most, right? Then we also show the fiscal years that the project is anticipated to span, the funding source and cost estimates, the funding priority level, and finally, the name, photo, and contact information for the relevant project managers. In some instances, you'll see TBD in that section, and that's just because that is a project that's an outer year, so we have not selected that project manager at this time. However, we've identified the project itself. So just for your information. So what is the role of the Public Works and Transportation Committee? So basically, the task of the committee is to recommend and later for council to determine which CIP project should be funded in which fiscal year. The only projects that committee is recommending and council is approving for selection for funding are those in fiscal year 21-22. All right, now getting into the new projects that are going to be found in this next iteration of the CIP. We've highlighted a couple of those projects here, for the first being one that came out of the council priorities discussion, which is the Oxnard Aquatic Center. We also have the Ramona School Pedestrian Crossing Improvements project that's in here. We actually did just obtain a grant successfully for that, and so we are going to initiate that project here in the near future. And then also the Wi-Fi in the Parks project here. So the intent is for the city to deploy Wi-Fi in various parks throughout the city to give access, especially to the children in our community who do not currently have access to internet at home. So under the category of buildings, we have 5 projects: the Oxnard Aquatic Center, the public restroom improvements, the senior center at 5th and Patterson, which actually was one of the council priorities as well. Then also tenant improvements at both the South Oxnard Senior Center and the Wilson Senior Center. Under Parks and Open Space, we have the Oxnard Trail Light Replacement Phase 2 project. For IT, the only new project here is the Wi-Fi in the parks, which I mentioned previously. Under Transportation and Drainage, we have a few projects, including citywide intersection improvements, railroad crossing upgrade at Cypress Road, 5 Points intersection modernization, as well as 5 Points intersection traffic signal rehabilitation, and the Oxnard Trail Class 1 bike path from Camino del Sol to Cooper Road, which is another grant-funded project that we were able to obtain more recently. Continuing on under Transportation and Drainage, we have now added also the Oxnard Trail Class 1 bike path from Cooper Road, now down to 2nd. The Ramona Preschool Pedestrian Crossing Enhancements project that we did receive a grant for recently. And similar to that, Safe Routes to School Safety and Enhancement project, we actually did just receive a grant for that as well over the past month or so. So that's exciting news. Then we've also added the stormwater conveyance improvements along Oxnard Boulevard. And finally, under Transportation and Drainage, we have the US 101 Del Norte Interchange Upgrade project. Under Utilities, we have just a few. We have the tenant improvements for environmental resources, effluent pump station improvements at the Oxnard Wastewater Treatment Plant, the maintenance building expansion at the wastewater treatment plant, plant control center locker room remodel at the treatment plant. And then under at water, for the water distribution, we have CMWD transmission main project that we are adding. That is a critical project, as that transmission main currently supplies over 50% of the city's water supply. And lastly, we have the blending station, transfer switch, and panel replacement project. Now, we can't talk about the capital program as a whole without acknowledging that we do have underfunded capital needs. And so I'm highlighting here some of the the most impactful underfunded capital needs that we have, but that this is not an all-inclusive list. This is just highlighting those that impact the residents the most. So citywide street improvements and citywide alley reconstruction. So for street improvements, we actually only have a guaranteed funding source of about $4 million through RMRA or SB1, or gas tax, at any given time. So every year, that's the only amount of funding that we have that is what I call guaranteed. Any funding outside of that has to come either from the general fund or other funding sources that we would need council to help us determine where those sources are coming from, and they'll have to prioritize that against other needs throughout the city. Same with citywide alley reconstruction. That has been underfunded for quite some time. We have not received very much funding in the past. We just recently allocated a couple million from the HERO bonds into the alley reconstruction, and that's going to target a lot of the alleys down the Oxnard Boulevard corridor. But at this time, it's still a severely underfunded capital need. Similar to that, the stormwater system upgrades. We have a few neighborhoods who do experience some flooding issues and things of that nature that need to be addressed, and we do not have a funding source identified for those. And then citywide facility repairs, such as roof replacement, tenant improvements, things of that nature. That's an underfunded capital need. And finally, everybody is familiar with this, but citywide park playground, restroom, and sport court improvements, those have been underfunded for a number of years as well. And so that's something that council will need to consider as we continue this conversation. All right, so what are some of our challenges here? So not only do we have challenges in terms of not having enough funding to actually pay for the improvements themselves, but we also have limited resources across various city departments that affect workflow. So here in Public Works, for instance, if we were to receive more funding, let's say for any of those unfunded capital needs, then we would actually need more staff to be able to manage those projects and see them through completion. But we also have to consider that as we in Public Works staff up to complete these projects, then we're impacting our friends over in finance and purchasing and risk across the street, because that means that there are more contracts being taken across the street, or there's more invoices, or just other administrative tasks that affect not just Public Works, but of course other departments. And so while we, in Public Works have an idea of what it is that we need in terms of resources, we all have to still consider that they'll have a need as well. Additionally to that, there's an anticipated increase in workload due to Measure. Same concept. As more funding is available, that means that we get to do more work, which is great news. However, we do need the resources so that we can appropriately execute those in not only a timely manner, but do it well. In addition to that, we have been experiencing severe construction delays due to material shortages. So there's material shortages throughout not just the nation, but in some instances worldwide, due to just lack of steel products, concrete products being available, plastic products being available. For instance, the pipe that we use to replace the cast iron pipe throughout the city, recently there's been a huge shortage because of the Arctic event that happened down in Texas and Louisiana, where the majority of that plastic pipe is produced. And so now we're experiencing 2 to 3 months, if not more, worth of delay in pipe delivery because they were not able to produce that pipe for quite some time. And in fact, some of those facilities are still not up and running at 100% capacity right now. So that's something that we all have to be aware of. And so there will be delays moving forward, at least until that gets resolved. And this is a nationwide issue. This is not unique to the city of Oxnard. And with that comes an increase in construction costs. So it's the rules of supply and demand. We have a huge demand and not enough supply. So with that comes increases in costs. So what other resources do we need to accomplish these goals? Well, for starters, we'd like to issue an on-call construction contract for street resurfacing, alley reconstruction, ideally something for roof repairs and replacements to get those done in a more timely manner as well. And then playground replacements is another on-call construction contract that we're seeking to get approved. Again, just to have the ability to execute these projects more quickly. And so it'll just make us more efficient across the board in delivering this project to the residents of the city. In addition to that, we do need more staff to manage these projects. And with more staff means more office space. As it stands today, here in Public Works, Engineering, and Traffic, we are pretty much at capacity. And so any staff increases we have will require us to consider where we can actually house those staff members. So just something that I'd like to highlight because it is something that we are contending with at this moment right now. And finally, I'm getting close to the end here. So the fiscal year 2021 accomplishments. We have 35 projects that are in the design phase actively right now. We have about 12 that are in the bid phase. We've awarded $35 million worth of projects or another 15 projects this fiscal year that are currently in construction, and we were able to complete 15 projects totaling $15 million. And that's not to mention that the projects that are currently either the bid packages are being assembled or are already out to bid are total more than $50 million. And so there's a lot of work happening over here in Public Works in the background, so to speak, but this is my opportunity to highlight to you all what it is that we do over here. So here's some examples of the projects that we did complete this year. So we did complete the Mandalay Bay seawall repairs project, which included the repair of 77 pilasters with concrete jackets. Here's some before and after photos for that. That was just completed in January of this year. As many of you have probably noticed, we resurfaced and did preventative maintenance for 73 lane miles throughout the city in this fiscal year alone. This before and after showing Esplanade Drive, that was one of the streets that we had that was in worse condition with a high average daily traffic count. And so we have actually gotten a lot of comments and whatnot on this street alone, and actually Rice Avenue as well. But yeah, we will continue to tackle our streets as fast as we can, and it's really all dependent on how much money we are able to receive to continue those endeavors. We did a roof repair over at our Del Norte facility where the materials recycling facility is. And this was over the office spaces. It was leaking over the equipment in some cases and office spaces. And so that's been taken care of. And we are looking to do a full roof replacement over the rest of the facility. And that's currently in design. And here I'm just going to go through the list of the projects that were completed. And while we don't have before and afters, I'd still like to make note of what it is that we completed. So we anticipate that the Powell Roof South Wing is completed this fiscal year. The Oxnard Trail Light Replacement Project from Entrada Drive to the path that's adjacent to the community garden over there in La Colonia, that's been completed. I mentioned already the pilaster jacket repairs at Mandalay Bay. And here are the various street resurfacing projects that were included in that 73 miles that I mentioned earlier. So the commercial area street resurfacing, commercial central neighborhood, the Five Points neighborhood, Rice Avenue. We did a drainage swale construction over at River Ridge. This was for regulatory purposes, but that's since been completed. We resurfaced Rose Avenue as well as Saviors Road. We also replaced 31 battery backup systems at various signalized intersections. And we are striving to make more of those replacements here in the near future for the remaining 130 something odd traffic signals that we have. We also completed the Vineyard Avenue resurfacing phase 2. That was from the US 101 on-ramp or bridge to Oxnard Boulevard. We also installed a brand new traffic signal at the intersection of Rose Avenue and Gary Drive, right in front of Oxnard College. And we also did the thin maintenance overlay phase 2, which was part of that 73 miles citywide. So it was just a preventative maintenance throughout the city. And for our folks over at the utilities, we did do we'll complete a tipping floor restoration by the end of the fiscal year. And I already mentioned that roof repair that we did at Del Norte. As far as financial impact goes, there's actually no direct fiscal impact with the adoption of the proposed 5-year CIP. The CIP provides just a full fiscal presentation of the capital projects that are planned to be undertaken in the next 5 years. But obviously this is provided that funding is actually available. But I do want to note that the projects that council identifies and approves to be adopted in the CIP for next fiscal year or fiscal year 21-22 will be presented for adoption during the city's budget approval process in June. So you're not approving the actual budgets for those projects right now. We're just adopting the 5-year capital improvement program. That does conclude my presentation. I thank you for your time and I'm happy to take any questions.